Very recently, I've realized how much time I really do spend on my phone. I deleted Instagram for like maybe a couple of weeks, and I was like, wait, where did all of this time come from? I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful, I guess. Everybody's like, oh, we're gonna be offline, we're gonna be offline, baby. I ain't gonna be offline. But I do want to not spend, I think, so much time kind of just scrolling back and forth through literally nonsense. Tonight, I promised myself no phone, no phone, no screen. I've made so much progress on my knit this week, trying to be more mindful and more aware of when I'm kind of just aimlessly scrolling, not paying attention, letting it eat and chew up all my time. At least specifically for this week, I've been trying to be just a little bit more mindful, and I've been able to knit maybe half of a garment already. It is the Basic Open Knit by Carly, one of my favorite knitting patterns ever, maybe possibly my favorite pattern ever. I think this is literally the only pattern that I've worked through like over 3 times. When thinking about what I wanted to knit, mainly what comes to mind kind of is like my summer makes, just because I don't want to commit to like a cardigan or maybe a warm weather make that I won't be able to get any use out of. The Lion Brand cotton yarn in, I think the shade name is Acrew. I'm absolutely loving this. Wait, really quick, friend, let me try it on for you. I do remember the last time that I made this pattern, I modified the sleeves just because the way that the original pattern is written, I feel like the sleeves they're not tight fitting enough. I cannot remember for the life of me if I've ever written down the notes, so I'm going to actually go through my notebook and see if I can see any of the notes. But basically, I'm working on the sleeves tonight. Also, from the original pattern, I crop it just a little bit because my torso is short. I always feel like the back is still a little bit too long. I've never knit the front and the back like as different lengths. I think the next time I make this, I'm going to make the back just a little bit shorter. You can kind of see, I don't know, can you kind of see what I'm talking about? I feel like the back is like really long and the front is cropped. Like the front is perfect. The front is literally perfect. You can kind of see how my jeans, like how I wear my clothes a little bit. I feel like the back, I would want it to be just like up a little bit higher. I don't know, but this is what we have. This is what we're working with. And so tonight I really just plan on working on the sleeves. This has been so fun to knit. I really love this project. This is actually the pattern that made me want to start knitting. I also really like this pattern because I'm using 12 milliliter needles. I don't know. I love using like really big chunky needles. And so I'm gonna have to pick up the stitches in the armhole. I wonder how many times I've actually worked through this pattern. Off the top of my head, last year I made it with the Noro yarn. That was so beautiful. That was like, I think that's one of my favorite yarns I've ever used for any of my projects. The beige one, the one that I frogged, I made that one with my Malabrigio. That's probably the most similar to this one, you know, that I'm making right now. The very first one that I made was the hot pink. It was like hot pink and black stripes. And then when I made my terracotta sleeves, that was like a modified version of this pattern. And then I also made like really colorful scrap yarn. It was like a red fire theme sleeves as well. So literally when I say this is my favorite knitting pattern, this is literally my favorite knitting pattern, especially considering how I'm somebody who can barely make it through one knitting pattern. And so for me to make it all the way through a knitting pattern multiple times, that really tells you something. Very beginner friendly. This was like one of my first garments that I ever knit. And now, you know, like all these years into my knitting, it's a project that I always come back to. So I was at Michael's, my first time there, you know, like in a minute. I don't really be at Michael's for real. Michael's sells merino now. Who was gonna tell me that Michael's sells merino wool now? Wait, I think I might have actually written down the notes. I do remember that I modified the sleeves just because in the original pattern, I felt like the sleeves weren't tight enough on my arm. This page right here literally says sleeves. I wonder, okay, let's see. It is very free-handed, very abbreviated. It's like trying to decode hieroglyphics. But all of my knitting notes, I use kind of like the same symbols, so I feel like I'll be able to figure it out. Let me pick up the stitches for the sleeves on this, try to decipher whatever this means, and then we'll come back. Current me is very appreciative for past me for making such thorough notes about my sleeves. Thorough notes that are easy to read, help and make the knitting process easier. Who would have thought? Honestly, I've made this pattern so many times, it would actually be a shame if I didn't have, you know, the notes for the little modifications that I make, but I've picked up all of the stitches on the sleeve. Basically, I'm just going to stockinette for like 5 or 6 rows and then decrease. And I'm kind of just doing that for the rest of the sleeve. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I'm not really in a rush. I feel like this has worked up pretty quick though. I think I started on Monday, 5 days later, and I haven't been knitting on it every single day. I'm still trying to get used to, you know, like more basic, more simple knits. Normally what I knit is so colorful. It's so different than, you know, the era that I'm in right now, but I'm actually really loving this. This is one of my favorite like yarns that you can buy in the store ever. Traditionally, when I buy my yarn, I buy them online. My plan is to wear this like over my swimsuit or when I go roller skating in the afternoon and it kind of gets, you know, like a little bit chilly and I don't want, you know, to carry my entire jacket. My sleeves are going to keep me warm. With all of the time that I've suddenly found this week, creative thing that I've been getting into is making stitch markers. So this is the stitch marker that I've made actually for this project right here. Wait, let's put it on. I normally use, you know, like these little basic plastic ones and they're fine. I have so many of them, but I don't know, this is an idea I've wanted to do for a while and I have like a lot of jewelry making things. And so the other night I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a stitch marker. So the ring that I used to make this specific one is just like a keychain ring. I feel like it's a little bit too big, but all of the other rings I had were too small. So these needles are pretty big. I can't explain it, but I feel like having like a custom stitch marker, a fancy stitch marker, it makes me want to work on the project more. Like I get really excited to make it to the front of the row. I've been keeping the stitch markers that I make in this little ashtray that I got from the antique shop. I made this one. The clasp like opens up, kind of similar to this one. That's actually why I had went to Michael's the other day. I just wanted to see if I could find some charms. But it's like a Buddha charm, and then it was an eye charm, and like the hand, the one that's on my big stitch marker right here. You can see like the hand charm. It was like a pack of them and they were on sale for like $3. Some of the hardware, I got it off of an earring that I thrifted. And so this is kind of what I've been into making this week. Between making my stitch markers and actually, you know, making good progress on my knit, I've been feeling really good creatively. Also, I kind of like when I'm knitting to hear it jingle just a little bit, the charms. I am such an art girl to my core. I was looking at all of the supplies I had the other day and I saw how I had so many beads and like making stitch markers is something that I've wanted to do for a while. I don't know why in my mind I felt like I needed so many materials. I'm literally over here yapping away. I am not even keeping tally of what row I'm on. When I was in the store buying the yarn, I was looking at the other colors that they had. For sure, I want to make this jumper in black. I feel like having a black one and a white one is very necessary. There's also like a brown color. I wouldn't mind having a jumper in brown as well. I think white, black, and brown, that covers nearly most of my outfits. And we're back at our cutie stitch marker. So I'm basically just knitting in the round until I get to my decrease row. This is my second ball of yarn. I bought 3 in total. I'm predicting that the rest of the sleeve will use most of this yarn, and then for the third sleeve I'll use the rest of this yarn and then a little bit of the third yarn. So I think depending on how much yarn I have left over from this project, maybe making like a little headpiece, like a little mesh headpiece to match this. I think that'd be really cute. When I was editing my last video, I noticed that every time I want to say millimeter, I say milliliter. I think maybe even in the beginning of this part when I said I'm knitting on 12 millimeter needles, I said 12 milliliter. In the moment when I'm saying it, I'm not even thinking too hard about like the exact the exact term, but when I go back and I edit it, it always drives me crazy when I mispronounce a word, especially like if I repeat the section over and over for whatever reason, but I say it wrong every single time. I'm like, girl, why are you repeating it wrong 10 times? Like, you should have just went with it the first time. The other day when I was rolling through Ravelry, I did find this pattern right here. I love the neckline on this tee. Between this and the basic open knit, I think these are going to be my summer makes. The tee is so cute. I was scrolling and seeing like other people's projects and seeing like what kind of yarn they use, and I know it's so basic, but I kind of want to make like a beige one, kind of a cream one, kind of how I'm making this basic open knit. I just feel like it'd be really cute with jeans. I really just want to step up my handmade wardrobe game for real. I feel like the best that I look, the times, you know, that I feel like I really killed it on my outfit, my fashion looks the best, are outfits that I make myself, really. And so I feel like I'm gonna make, you know, like these basic open knits just because I kind of need them. These are my essentials. I do want to get more into just like hand making the clothes that I wear. I'm really right now into like the cowl neck. I don't want to call it a trend. I guess the cowl neck has been around forever, but a cowl neck for the summer. I do want to attempt to sew a top like that. I know I can knit something like that. And I just named 15 things that I'm already trying to knit. And I want something, you know, that I feel like wouldn't be too difficult to try to tackle sewing. I went to the mall the other day and in a lot of the stores, you know, like I saw the cowl neck. I think that's kind of trending right now, but I want to make my own so that I can choose, you know, like my own fabric. The ones that I saw in the store, none of them really spoke to me like that. That's also why I'm kind of starting more specifically this summer, but just in general, I want to kind of step up my handmade fashion just a little bit more. I feel like when I go retail shopping, like in the stores, I don't go very often, but like every time that I go, nothing ever really screams out at me. And I feel like I've been able to kind of discover fashion that I like. It's been a little bit easier for me to come into my personal style when I'm able to, you know, tailor the clothes specifically to my body so that they can fit the way that I want them to fit, and the cuts and the prints and the patterns that I want. I have some upcycle pieces, but like garments that I've made from scratch, I don't think I've ever even really made anything from scratch. Maybe we'll just upcycle some things, but I do definitely want to get just a little bit deeper into my handmade fashion. I feel like the best that I've ever looked, my favorite outfits I've ever pulled together usually have a handmade element. Okay, wait, we're coming to the end of this row. Okay, and now we decrease. Okay, for some reason my notes, like, I don't know what this means anymore. I'm assuming that I just keep following the pattern that I've been following. My notes kind of just trail off and there's no longer any stitch counts or numbers, it's just all tally marks. I'm assuming that I'm just going to follow the pattern that I've been following. This is what it's looking like so far though. I know it doesn't look like much, but this is what we have so far. Okay, so on my notes, I'm supposed to stop once I reach this amount of stitches. We're gonna try it on and see what we're working with. I feel like a lot of the garments that I make, the sleeves unintentionally end up being like just a little bit too short. Only because, like, you know when you have your hands up and your sleeves kind of go down? I feel like normally I stop my sleeves like literally directly at my wrist, like when my arm is down. And then, you know, when I'm moving and we're vibing and we're living, the sleeves get a little bit like too short. I think this is the perfect length actually. We're gonna cast off for the first sleeve. Okay, so the length is good. I'm just gonna cast off for the sleeve. So we have one sleeve done and this is what it's looking like. We have an entire sleeve done. We did an entire sleeve tonight. I'm very happy with this actually. I'm very, very happy with this actually. It takes me a second to really bend the wire, but once I do, it looks a little something like this. And you can see this bead right here that I have. It already has the hardware on it. It comes off of that earring. Here's the second earring that I haven't cut off yet, but you can see how all of the beads already have their own hardware and it's attached to the earring. This was like literally the most perfect find for my stitch markers. Plus, I love the colors. So this is what the earring looked like before I cut it up. I just take the beads out of my little collection container and then I attach them with some hardware. I used this one. So it has the flat bottom and then the top is just this. And then I stick the beads on them and then with my pliers, I bend the wire and put the beads. So this is literally so cute. So this is the one that I made. This is a close-up so you can see a little bit better. Similar concept, you see the two beads, the loop, and then I join them with the jump ring. This clip right here, I got this off of an old keychain. This is literally like a keychain ring. It's huge. And then similar concept, but I just did one bead because this bead is so big. But it has the flat bottom and then a jump ring, and then here's a bead from that same earring, and then I put a charm. And you can see this dog. This one is really cute, this dog. And then like this little grayish stone. Dog charm came off of an old bracelet that I had. The jump ring is really small, so it's better for like my really small needles. There's this really cool bead store in LA. I got like my seeing eye bead from there. I'm gonna have to go back and see if they have any charms. This is really fun to make. I do want to get bigger jump rings for my like 5mm and 6mm needles, just because those are the ones that I use the most. So this is the little wire part that I wrapped. I think it's gonna work. I'm gonna connect all of these beads to it and then we're gonna see what happens. And then at the end, we have a really cute stitch marker. So this is what all of the beads look like when I put them all together. I made these specifically for my 6mm needles that I plan to use on my next project. So yes, we're gonna add her to my collection of stitch markers. Oh, I wonder if this clasp part would be big enough for these needles. Wait, it is. Okay, I have more of these clasps lying around somewhere. I'm gonna find them and then I'll attach those beads to this, but this is my new hyperfixation, friends, making stitch markers. Especially the beads and the charms that I have. I think they're really fun. And I've been like thinking of a way to use, you know, some of the supplies that I have. All of the stitch markers I've made are actually super cute. Get into it. Okay, it's getting really late. I did go back and change the stitch marker to the clasp that I had. I actually got it off of this little mousse Canada keychain that I had. It was cute, but I think my stitch marker is a little bit cuter. I'm gonna consider this a very, very successful creative craft knitting night. I finished an entire sleeve and I'm actually loving the way that this jumper looks. Maybe I'll be able to finish the sleeve, you know, tomorrow. I'm going to post the finished result on Instagram, so if you want to see it, you can always find me there. Yes, I hope you feel inspired to make something. I never, you know, want to get on here and be like, oh, I'm so offline. I create more than I consume. Get off of your phone. Or like, I'm just as addicted, you know, as the next person. But these days I am trying to put just a little bit of more time and energy into my creative hobbies and tackle some of the ideas that I've had in my head for a long time that for some reason, you know, I'm overthinking. I hope this video was entertaining a little bit. I hope you feel inspired to create something, anything. Thank you so much for spending time with me, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye.